Good, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 council meeting. And we'll start with disclosure of pecuniary interest. If not, we'll move on to our presentation for 2024 audited financial statements by KPMG. Oscar Coloni, thank you very much, Oscar, for doing this tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. My apologies for not being there in person. I had planned to attend, but with the weather forecast, I asked Chris if it was okay if I attended virtually. So I owe you guys a meeting in person. So council, if I may, I'm just going to share my screen, and the purpose of tonight's presentation is to take council through the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024. So consistent with what we've done in the past, sorry, I'm just getting everything aligned. We've prepared a very brief presentation to take council through the statements, which I'll sort of progress as we move through the discussion today. So from an audit perspective, our audit is complete. The last thing we require is council's approval of the financial statements tonight. We've executed our audit in accordance with Canadian auditing standards, and these are the rules that govern how auditors undertake these types of engagements. What you'll find, council, is our audit is performed based on materiality, and materiality is the threshold of errors that we are able to absorb before we're either required to have them corrected or change our audit opinion. And consistent with not-for-profit organizations like municipalities, it's not really based on your net income per se, because you don't have a profit motivation, but rather it's based on revenues or expenses. So we've used 3% of prior year's expenses, which is consistent with the approach that we've adopted in the prior year, and that yields a materiality of $133,000. Now, council, for the purposes of our audit, we use materiality for a number of different things. For example, we use it to calculate our sample sizes, but for the purposes of council, what I would suggest the most relevant use of materiality is it drives what's known as the posting threshold. And this is the level above which, if we actually have an error that we've detected in the audit and it's not fixed, we have to communicate it to you tonight. It's calculated as 5% of materiality, or an amount of $6,700. And that is effectively the level of precision that we have from an audit perspective. So as I've mentioned, our audit is complete. We're prepared to issue what's known as an unqualified or clean audit opinion. This is the highest level of assurance that you can receive under Canadian auditing standards, so it really doesn't get better than this. What we do need is we need council to approve the financial statements tonight. We require Chris to sign off on what's known as a representation letter, which is her attestation to us that she hasn't failed to disclose any information. And then we just need to stick it in our files and we're done. So from an audit perspective, there's nothing of any significance that we really need to disclose to council tonight. There's no uncorrected audit differences above our posting threshold of $6,700. So when we say this is a clean audit, this is about as clean as it gets, because we haven't had to eat into our materiality, and no deficiencies from a control perspective either. So in terms of the financial statements themselves, the first statement is your statement of financial position, and this is a snapshot of your assets and liabilities at December 31st, 2024. So just to provide a bit of insight into how some of the numbers will have moved, you'll see that your cash and investment balances have gone up from about $4.14 million last year to $4.8 million this year. That's an increase of about $680,000. And there's a number of things that will pull your cash balances up and down. So the municipality has had a cash adjusted operating surplus, which also includes changes in accounts receivable and accounts payable of about $1.2 million. Now, this is a cash adjusted surplus for financial reporting purposes, and you need that surplus to pay for a bunch of stuff, including principal repayments on long-term debt, and capital additions during the year, as well as reserve transfers. There's a number of accounts receivable on your books, taxes receivable and accounts receivable, and this represents grants and taxes that are earned during the year and collected after year end. So you'll see that your total receivable balances have gone down by about $70,000. There's a number of things, once again, that make this up. Accrued interest on your investments is down by about $46,000, and this is the timing of when you buy your GICs. Your HST receivable is down by about $34,000, and this is impacted by the timing of your capital. In years where you have big capital spend, you'll typically get a higher percentage of the HST back. Your tax collection has actually improved this year. And so because of that, your taxes receivable are down compared to last year, despite the fact you levied more in tax, you actually have less outstanding. And then offsetting this is a grant receivable from the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund for about $28,000 that they owe you at the year end. From a liabilities perspective, you can see your accounts payable and accrued liabilities are up by about $106,000. Part of this is your wages, so the timing of when you pay your last payroll versus the end of the year, but also it's higher OPP payables. Normally you have 1 month of OPP billings outstanding. This year you've had 2. And so more than anything else, it's just a matter from a timing perspective. I've talked about taxes and accounts receivable. So on slide 4, we've shown sort of the buildup. You can see that the bulk of your current taxes the bulk of your taxes receivable are current. So they're 2024 taxes that are outstanding at year end, which is healthy because it doesn't mean that you have a lot of people who aren't paying their taxes. In terms of other receivables, you can see the biggest component is your HST, followed by the interest, followed by NOHFC. One of the things that we've tracked, Council, in the past is what percentage of your tax levy is outstanding at year end, because this talks to whether you have a collection issue or potentially an affordability issue in the township. What you can see is that at the end of the year, your taxes receivable as a percentage of your levy was about 5%. And you'll see that that is the second lowest in the last 10 years, if you will, of the data that we've been tracking. It's also a significant decrease from 2023. And once again, as we've mentioned, your collections have improved on a year-over-year basis. As we've mentioned, accounts payable are up because of the OPP and the wage-related accruals. You can see that on your financial statements, there's also deferred revenues. It's separated into 2 lines for accounting purposes. But what this represents is this is funding that you've received during the year that you haven't spent. And so rather than take it into income, you set it up on your books as a deferred revenue. And once you spend it, then it comes into income, it drops the number. It's up by about $272,000. And the biggest reason for this is because of your OCIF and your NORDS funding, which is funding received during the year, but not paid. So just to give you some breakdown, Council, with respect to your financial statements, in the accounts payable and accrued liabilities, we've provided a summary of the balances outstanding. Once again, you can see the increase predominantly related to your OPP accrual, but also related to wage accruals that have gone up on a year-over-year basis. In terms of the deferred revenue, you can see that it's really broken down into 4 buckets. There's the federal gas tax program. During the year, you received $109,000. You've used $99,000 of it. And under the program, you can receive it in a year. You don't have to spend it. You can bank it and apply it to future projects. Similarly, when you look at your OCIF and your NORDS funding, which are provincial funding programs for capital, there was $152,000 and $98,000 respectively that have been received. You haven't spent those yet, so those are available to fund future capital. In terms of other liabilities, municipal debt represents the balance of loans that are outstanding for the municipality. This has gone down by about $184,000. So during the year, there was new loan that was issued for the purchase of a public works pickup truck. So that brought your loan balance up by $80,000. You've also made principal repayments of $264,000, which brings this number down. On your loans, The interest rates range anywhere from 2.67% to the older one. The more recent loans, interest rates are obviously higher, so that's at about 6.3%. The other liability that you can see is the asset retirement obligation. And council, this is something that we discussed last year. It's the cost of remediating your landfill and remediating asbestos in your buildings when the buildings and the landfill reach the end of the useful life. So this is a number that's determined by the use of engineers and models that they use to estimate these remediation costs. Of the $3.9 million, $300,000 is related to asbestos remediation, and about 3.7 million is related to the landfill. And council, I'll just remind you sort of what we talked about last year. This is an accrual that you make for accounting purposes. It represents the cost in the future, and it's an estimate. It's a lot different than your hydro bill. It's a lot different than your OPP bill because you're not going to have to cut a check for it today. These costs are a number of years into the future, in some cases 20, 30, 40 years, and you won't have to pay them all at once. You pay them over time. So while it is the largest liability on your books, I do want you to know it is different because you're not going to have to cut anybody a check for $3,952,000. This is something that you record for financial reporting purposes. So just in terms of your non-financial assets, the largest asset that you have is your investment in tangible capital assets. This is the township's investment in your roads, your buildings, and your fleet. When you buy an asset, you put it on the books and you amortize it or depreciate it over its useful life. So during the year, your tangible capital assets have gone down by about $273,000. There was $343,000 of capital during the year, and we've summarized some of them on this slide. So self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department of about $141,000. You resurfaced Bridge Grove Drive for about $99,000. And as we mentioned, there was the Public Works pickup truck that you bought for $81,000. Offsetting this is about $818,000 in amortization expense. So the additions bring this number up. The amortization expense brings this number down. So in terms of the next financial statements, your statement of operations is a summary of your revenues and your expenses for the year. So your total revenues amounted to $4.69 million. You'll notice, council, that's down compared to last year by about $163,000 or 3.4%. The reason for that is capital grants. Capital grants will go up or down depending on your capital spend and the projects that you have. So last year, there were more capital grants than this year. As I've mentioned, when we talked about deferred revenue, you actually did get more capital grants for OCIF and NORDS, but because you didn't use the money, it's not reflected as revenue. You'll see your total expenses have gone up by about 12% or $530,000. Part of this is your wage costs have gone up by about $220,000. And part of this is the asset retirement obligation. That liability, the estimate has gone up by about another $200,000. What you'll see, council, is you have a deficit for financial reporting purposes of about $298,000. I just want to re-emphasize, council, how you prepare financial statements is different than how you budget. And so I know it may seem a little weird for your auditor to tell you this, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to the surplus or the deficit that's on your financial statements because that number is not how you budget. You need to adjust for it. So to give you a bit of perspective with respect to your revenues, on the left-hand side of this slide, you can see your grant revenues over the last 3 years. So 2022 in yellow, 23 in blue, and 24 in red. Your largest single source of funding from a grant perspective is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. This is an unconditional grant. There's no conditions associated with it from the province that funds operating expenses. And so that is amounted to around $600,000. You can then see other grants that come into play: OCIF, gas tax, and NORDS. These are all capital grants. So what you can see, council, is in 2022, the yellow bar, you recognized revenue for all three of them. In 2023, you recognized revenue for all of them. in 2024, you spent some of the gas tax money, but you basically banked the OCIF and the NORDS funding to use in future years for future capital. So that's why your revenue has come down. It's the capital grants and it's the timing of when you recognize them. From a user fee and other revenue perspective on the right-hand slide, we've shown sort of your major components. You can see the biggest chunk is interest expense. As interest rates have actually come down, you've made less interest in 24 than you did in 23, but you can still see that interest revenue is up significantly in comparison to where you were in 22, and that reflects the fact that the interest rates are still higher. Building permits are up compared to last year. In 2022, they were significantly higher. What you find in 2022 is there was a bit of a hangover from the pandemic. So people were doing a lot more from a building development perspective because pandemic conditions were easing. You can see landfill revenues are up. These are your tipping fees. They're up higher to the prior year. And then a variety of other revenue sources that make this up. From an expenditure perspective, on this slide, we summarize your expenses. Your biggest single cost are wages and benefits. And as we've mentioned, they're up about $221,000 on a year-over-year basis. Part of this is wage rate, part of this is hours. Material costs, contracted costs are generally consistent, slightly higher than last year, but not by much. External transfers represent transfers that you will make to things like the DSAB and the health unit. Your asset retirement obligation costs, as I mentioned, it's up more this year compared to last year because of a change in the estimate. So that's about a $200,000 increase. And then the amortization expense that we discussed, a little bit lower than last year, but it's sitting at around $818,000. So a breakdown of your revenues and your expenses. So council, I mentioned when we talked about your statement of operations about how you have a deficit for financial reporting purposes that really reflects your financial statements, doesn't really reflect your budget. So on this slide, slide 11, what we've done is we've taken your financial statements and we've adjusted it to reflect how you budget. So you have a financial deficit of $295,000. What you'll find is there's a number of things in the financial statement deficit that you don't budget for. So I talked about amortization expense. You don't budget for amortization, you budget for capital expenditures. So we add that $818,000 back. We added back the change in the asset retirement obligations because once again, that's an accounting estimate. You don't actually budget for it. You don't levy for it. What we then do is we deduct things that you budget because you spend cash on them, but for accounting purposes, they don't actually go through your deficit. So we deduct about $344,000 of your capital expenditures. There's $80,000 of proceeds on long-term debt, which is a revenue source in your budget. There's $264,000 of principal repayment on long-term debt. Your deficit only includes interest. It doesn't include principal repayments. But when you budget for that principal to go out as well because it's cash going out the door. You've transferred $719,000 to reserves, which is a drawdown on your surplus. And then what you've also done is for budgeting purposes, you took your surplus from last year and you rolled it into this year's budget. 2024 budget. So it reduces the levy. So what you can see is when you make all of these adjustments, your adjusted deficit after everything you've budgeted for is $243,000. And what I want to caution council is when you look at your deficit, it's actually a surplus of $476,000. And the reason for that, council, is this $243,000 deficit is after you transfer $719,000 to reserves. That's money that's yours that you've put aside. So technically, this isn't the case where you're spending more than you're making. What it is it reflects the fact that you've transferred more into reserves. So this, council, is why we talk about when you look at your statement of operations, once again, you can't really get tied into that deficit number or surplus number because it doesn't reflect how you budget. The reality is you've had a small deficit of about $243,000 after your reserve transfers as well. So, council, that concludes our presentation. I hope it's provided a bit of an explanation that assists with the financial statements. I'd like to thank you once again for allowing us the opportunity to be of service for the township. I'd also like to thank Chris for the assistance provided during the course of the audit. The audit's gone exceptionally well. And in terms of timing, just to let you know, you are consistently the first municipality that I go in front of with respect to financial statements. So from a timing perspective, everything works well. Chris provides us with great support, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you. If there are any questions, happy to answer them at this time.
I have one question, Oscar. With what just happened at midnight last night with US tariffs, what would you recommend we be budgeting or looking out for?
What I would suggest, Your Worship, is a couple of things. There's some debate as to what this means in Northern Ontario. If you were in Southern Ontario and you had a lot of companies that were involved in the automotive sector, this is obviously going to be a big problem. At the end of the day, what I would suggest, Your Worship and Council, is affordability is probably more of an issue, because what you're going to find is, regardless of what you do for a living, I would suggest to you this is going to hurt the Canadian economy. So what you'll find is that disposable income is going to become problematic. As tariffs come into play, what you're expecting is more inflationary pressure. And so people are going to have less money that for in an environment where things are just going to cost more. Like, let's be honest, we don't grow pineapples in Canada. So that's the first comment I would make, is from an affordability standpoint, it's probably not a bad idea to watch your budget, watch your discretionary spending, and watch what you're going to your taxpayers for. From a municipal perspective, what would be interesting to know is, are you sourcing anything from the states that is going to now be 25% more expensive because of the tariffs, not that the Americans are putting on, but that Canada's putting on. So typically, we don't see a lot of procurement that comes out of the US, not in the municipal sector, at least not in Northern Ontario that I can see. Where you find it more is predominantly in healthcare, where they're buying stuff out of the States. But from a procurement perspective, probably not a bad idea. If for whatever reason you need to buy something out of the States, maybe a fire truck, who knows? You may want to ask yourself if there's a made in Canada alternative. And this is the difference between Zambonis and Olympias. One is made in Canada, one is made in the States. I think Zambonis are made in the States, and I think Olympias are made in Canada. So in order to avoid potential tariffs, you may want to buy an Olympia as opposed to a Zamboni. Those would be the types of things, but that's very specific from a procurement perspective. The third comment that I would make is, I talked about affordability and the concept of almost constriction, if you will, in the Canadian economy, and how that's going to hurt your taxpayers. You're going to find the federal and provincial governments are probably going to be a lot tighter when it comes to money as well. And so when you look at capital planning, for example, try to maximize every grant you could get, but there may come a time when the amount of grants that are available may not necessarily be the same as they have been in the past. So what you may want to do is you may want to watch your capital spend going forward, because if you can't get grants, then it's either debt, reserves, or the taxpayer. And so it is a bit of wait and see. The last time this happened, my understanding is the tariffs were in place for a year, and then they came off and the economy managed to settle. But, between a tariff war that's going on, between the federal deficits that are up and an impending election where the expectation is whomever's coming in is going to right size the budget. In the most recent election, the Premier of Ontario promised $40 billion of new spending. He didn't say how he was going to fund that. I think what you're going to find is you're going to have a lot less money all the way around. And so, Your Worship, to your question, I think affordability and I think financial prudence is probably more important now than it was yesterday, just because the ground is shifting underneath you.
Thank you very much, Oscar. That was well said.
Great answer.
We had talked a lot about this at KPMG, by the way. If you want more information, I am
Yeah.
happy to share.
Okay, no, that was really good. Well done. Any other questions?
We got nothing.
No, it was a great question.
So
Well-
for those councillors that are attending FNUM, Oscar's going to be doing a presentation at FNUM.
Good. Well, on behalf of our council and staff, thank you very much. Another great job. Always a good presentation from you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if I may, Chris, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. We'll get you the rep letter and we are ready to go final tomorrow once you get it back to us.
Yep, Sarah sent it. I saw it on my email tonight when I was heading up here.
So Your Worship and Council, I just want to say officially, you are my first municipality that's done for 2024.
Yeah. well-
Great job,
well done.
Chris.
Thank you and
And team.
and team.
And
Thank
team,
you to everybody.
absolutely.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Oscar.
everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Have a good.
Good job.
Yeah,
you.
good job, everybody.
We have that later on the agenda.
Oh. Okay, moving on. Committee reports. Councillor Foot.
I have two this week. So we did meet the EMS committee last week. It was really short this week, but it was good. We talked a lot about the community paramedicine program. They were able to defer 80 calls away from the EMS and call outs. So it really helps, right? So that whole piece is they don't have to send anybody out. It's kind of good. Right now, this year, they have a surplus. The money they received, they have a surplus. So what happens with the surplus? It's 50-50. We keep 50% of it goes back. So they're gonna take that 50%, they're gonna roll it into reserves for capital purchases for next year, or for 2025. But guaranteed, the ministry is clawing back their portion. That is what it is, right? There is optimism out there for permanent funding. Well, maybe not after today, right? But there was optimism out there for permanent funding, which is what they're praying for. And they said, please, MPP lobbying would not hurt anything. So they will be sending out a resolution to all municipalities asking for support. It is going to FNUM, it is going to all of them. So to try and push this program. And it's like, you've heard nothing but good about it all along, right? So that's good. We talked a lot about the 2024 response for cardiac arrest. So it is definitely below their target where they want to be, significantly below where they want to be. And they're working on it, but the problem is the distance traveling, right? So that big problem for that is the distance they're traveling and the amount of area they're taking on. So although it's being worked on, it's still a work in progress. They were talking about for every 7 times they go into their local area, into local, close to home, they go out to the further area 6 times. So it's a big part of the response times. It's a big part of the cost. And the biggest problem is, Northeast region of Nipissing has the biggest call volume for them.
Wow.
Northeast region of Nipissing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the biggest call volume for whatever reasons it is. But they're having a hard time getting out of the North Bay Regional Health Center, which is affecting response times, right? So we talked about South River Base. So that is owned by Macker and South River. So they own that base. There's a significant lease increase this year. And I would say a significant lease increase this year. It's because it's been undervalued up till now. And the lease is $1,000 a month with this quote unquote significant lease increase. Huh? Yeah, so in my world, $1,000 a month is nothing,
No.
right? Really. So next meeting is May 22nd. So that's that one. And then we did rec last night. We had fun at rec last night, lots going on. So Bottle Drive, we collected $273.90 from Bottle Drive. And we typically know this month is quieter. It'll probably pick up next month because, you know, once everybody's finished all their extracurricular activities and they get it all in, that'll be good. Thank you to everybody that showed up and helped do that because it's a job. I can't explain, but it's a job. Spaghetti dinner, we'll have the final numbers for next meeting. We weren't able to put together the costing prior to the meeting, but we did have 69 meals sold. So we were talking about it, and with all the snowmobiling in place and all the ice fishing and everything else, we we're only down less than 10 meals from last year.
That's good.
Right? So it was really good. It was fun. And we had a great time and amazing volunteers, right? We had great volunteers from the committee and from the office and everything. So everybody had a great time. Winter cards, we've had that in play. It's been 4 sessions for winter cards with no attendance. So we made the decision yesterday to cancel it. And maybe it'll work another time, but for now we took it off the books. Trivia night is coming soon, April 5th. Registration opens today. So we have to make a decision whether we're gonna put a table in. Right? I think it'd be fun. Council table would be a lot of fun. April 19th is our family Easter fun day. We're gonna do some cookies. We're gonna do some eggs. A scavenger hunt, but we're gonna separate into 3 different groups this time. So we're gonna take younger kids, put them into the like boards, and then another group, the next group. I didn't write down the age groups, and I'm sorry, but out into the field. So let's go search for eggs, and then the older group, like 10 to or 12 to 14, whatever that is, they will go on the scavenger hunt. They're required to take a picture as a group in front of it to qualify and come back. And what we found in the previous years is they just scattered and they didn't stay together as a group. So we're trying to find a way to make it a little more, right? We're also gonna do a, we're gonna pot plants. We're gonna plant, we're gonna make planters. Suddenly, I don't know where I read, right? But we're gonna do planters and the kids are gonna take home plants this year.
Thanks.
It'll be so fun.
Yeah.
But maybe like sunflowers, herbs.
Herbs,
Just to
yeah, sorry, yes.
throw that out
just-
there, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
A bean plant.
Thank you,
Well, you
yes.
should have seen me last night. I was a write-off. I was a write-off. I kept skipping lines, but they were laughing at me, but, yeah, so we're gonna give them a choice of what they wanna plant. We were talking about herbs, and I think herbs would be a lot of fun. May 10th is the baking event, and we're gonna be doing scones. Julie's taking on that event with you, right, Chris?
I'm helping,
You're helping her?
but Kristen's gonna take my spot in
Oh,
that
that'll be fun.
development.
Like blueberry scones with lemon.
I guess.
I asked for samples prior. Yeah, I'll let you know.
So because of the restrictions in the kitchen, we had to separate it in 4 different times. Because we can only put 4 different groups of 2 or whatever it is at a time to fit into the ovens. So it'll be good to be a 10, 11, 12 in one session. I think we said a maximum of 16 group, 16,
Still working out the fine details.
still working out, but yeah. After that, we have the next teen dance, which is June 13th. We are gonna do the first test on splitting up the groups, a younger group, which is 10 to 13, and then an older age group at 14 to 16 at different times. And I think they'll really like that. And that's what they've asked for. So that's good. After that is Canada Day. So that's June 28th. We're just working out the finals, right? But I think we decided on like magicians, balloons, face painting, DJs, fireworks, and then we'll go from there.
Early stage of planning.
Early stage, we're still working on it. We just need to finalize stuff, but that's what seems to have worked really well in the past. And everybody loves that event. After that is music market, more details to follow. We're working on it. And fitness center update. So a memo went out to the members just saying to them, hey, you can't bring in your own equipment. And stuff like that, due to safety concerns. And then we are working on replacing some equipment. So working on replacing a treadmill, a bike, and elliptical. It's been a long time, so it's time. Command Community Center has their spring dance coming up, April 26th. So there'll be a band, it's licensed, and I think there was a fee to get in, I'm not sure, I can't remember. I couldn't find the,
It was
When I went to write it down.
$20 or $15 if you're a member council, but
okay, yep. And then last on our list is soccer registration open March 1st, and it closes on April 25th. Very busy. There's a lot going on. Did I,
and we need another volunteer.
we need another volunteer, yes.
We received a letter of interest, so that'll come forward on the next council.
Fabulous.
Any questions, thoughts? I can't say thank you enough for all the help we get, because we get tons of help. It makes it possible, right?
Thank you, Councillor Foot.
You're welcome.
Councillor Shelton.
Nothing for me this week.
Okay, well, thank you. Councillor Scott,
No, I don't have anything this week.
Councillor Kirky.
I have library. We had a meeting on February the 24th. We went over the balance sheet and the audit should be in May. Going over the income statement and the hours per week. And we're adding a line to separate janitorial fees from regular wages. Because one of the employees is doing both, but we need to separate it for accounting purposes because we don't check it out anymore. Chisholm let us know that they approved the budget in principle. And I informed them that we did, and Powassan is going to be discussing it at their next meeting.
We did a resolution and forwarded it to them.
Okay,
Their meetings tonight. What's tonight?
Yes.
yes,
Boston is
yes,
here
it is tonight. And we had an in-depth discussion on numbers of contributors from each community. Needs discussion on we need a discussion as a group on our upcoming agreement. That's, I think it's going to be in October. That was the month they were talking about, October. And they have a champion who's pushing for the agreement. So I suspect it's gonna come down the pipes. Then we had a closed session for 20 minutes. And we did a hydro grant application and we got confirmation that it'll pass. That is for, believe it or not, it's not for lights. I forget what that was for. Anyway, we got a technical, that's what it was for, technical grant. For, it was a $500 grant for cell phone for the library. They've been using just a regular wall phone with 2 portables. And there's no. And the seniors grant for IT training, it'll be finished in March. And the Friends of the Library said that they would help cover that tech training for the seniors. That's all I have. Oh, and also, you all got one of these? Rather than me try to remember at my age to all the events that are occurring throughout the month, we'll get one of these every month, so that I can go over it.
Yeah.
It's just a lot easier. We've been discussing it because I get it in my email at home, in my personal email, but not in my public email. And so now we get it once a month at a meeting, so.
Very much, Councillor Kirky. Yes.
Is the library open on Saturdays again?
We're gonna try and start, so this Saturday
The 29th?
on the 29th, and then we're gonna try and start on the 5th to see if we can get back into that routine again. We gotta see how it goes. We typically have
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Perky. Did everybody get a copy, Tom Piper's East Home Report? And read it, it's really well done. And I have one other thing. I was wondering about Councilor Scott having a key for the landfill and only him, because it's his trailer we use to do the empties. And I think it would be a lot safer and better if you did the empties on opposite days when it's not open.
It's up to you guys.
I like the idea,
And
because then we're
then,
not confined to the 2 days that they're open.
and then you can pick a nice day,
Mhm.
but you're not out there in the cold snow if it's gonna be like -2 instead of -20. But it's just, when you did Bear Creek on Friday, it's so congested, like you've got people recycling and then you got people trying to do the empties and it's,
Yeah, we had 5 cars there.
The landfill's closed for 3 days now, so yeah, it'd make it a little nicer for you.
yeah. So are you good with that,
You're
Dan?
okay with that?
Just James
Yeah,
alone,
I give
because-
it
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
and you'll get informed when I'm going in, so if you get the phone call, you know who's in there.
Right.
Yeah,
You do get the calls.
Oh, I guarantee you,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I went in there with a trailer.
yeah.
We get pictures, videos, yeah.
Yeah, and that way the key, like sometimes you lend your trailer, if you're going away,
Yeah.
then they can get your key and then bring it back to you, and you always have it.
Yeah.
Good? Okay, so. So I need a mover. That the minutes of the regular council meeting held February 18th, 2025 be adopted and published. All in favor? Carried. And I need a mover and a seconder. That's the clerk. Councilor Chelsea. That we adopt the 2024 audited financial statements for the township of Nipissing as presented. All in favor? Carried. Now we're going to review the capital budget and asset management forecast from 2025 to 2035.
This, we just have a few things. This has already been passed by council. In order to bring something back for reconsideration, we need to request council's permission. So tonight I'm going to go over the few things that need to change in the capital forecast, just pertaining to 2025 and a few items that will be shuffled through the years. And then at the next council meeting, we will have a resolution to amend it after you've had a chance to reconsider. Next. So the first thing we're changing is moving the shared vehicle that we had proposed for administration, building department and public works to 2026. We have a lot going on in 2025. I'm gonna skip through to fire department capital. Communications were had with the neighboring municipality and the water tank. Sharing a water tank was not a feasible option. So the fire chief did some investigation, and dry hydrants are a more economical way for us to go. And putting in 3 this year is actually half of what we had budgeted, bringing it to 35.5 instead. Those locations will be Black Creek Road North, Alsace at Hemlock Road, and Pilgers Road for 2025. That would also change the 2026 outlook to 3 dry hydrants instead of 2, and taking out the water tank. And those would be located at Pine Drive, Westview Drive, Highway 534 at Barton Lake, and Highway 654 at Bear Creek Bridge. And then moving down into 2027, the next change would be for the dry hydrants for 3, Niagara Road, Bobby Lake, and Wolf Lake Beach.
Is that 35.5, that's for all 3,
For
right?
all 3, yes.
Okay.
And then I think we've added one more in 2028. That was as far as we got for 11.8 at Alsace at Wolf Lake Road. Okay. And then moving forward. This one, I just wanted to draw your attention to the backhoe purchase for $290. It'll actually be a little bit less. But instead of going through financing with the bank, with the interest rates being what they are, we're going to finance this ourselves. So we're going to borrow it from our reserves and pay it back to our reserves using, we had asked during our tender process for the backhoe for each of them to give us their financing amount. So the lowest percentage was 5.4. So that is what we will be charging ourselves for interest. And that way we will be bringing in $35,109 in interest rather than payments. We're looking at new ways to bring in our funds because the GIC rates are going down.
Well, yeah, wouldn't it make sense to, in most capital or all capital purchases to,
If we were
Yeah,
making more
awesome.
money, it depends on what the rates are. So when our GIC rates are really high, we don't want to borrow against.
Mhm.
If we can finance it for lower, but now that's totally reversed. So we're going to be financing from ourselves.
How long are we gonna take to pay it back?
5 years.
Beautiful.
And we do it on an amortization schedule, and we do it as a in and out of reserve, so it's captured on the financial statements.
Beautiful.
Public Works Capital. This is where the majority of the change is coming in. So, as Oscar explained, a lot of our reserves, or a lot of our grant money, we didn't spend last year because we couldn't get the contractors to come in and do the work that we needed. So we had 2 major fails of 2 large culverts that we're hoping to repair this year, and we'll be using the grant money for that. But going through this change, there were some changes in the financing and quotes that we got and the project scope. So for Bear Creek Culvert was going to be a reline for 300,000. That isn't going to be the case. Now we're looking at an engineered dig out and replace the culvert at a cost of 700,000. The reline of Stonecutters Road culvert went from 300,000 to 400,000. We had on our previous schedule to do a reline the culvert on Hart Road. That is a joint project with Calendar. It isn't a requirement right now. It isn't a current need. We were doing it because we needed to use the NORDS fund. The NORDS funding is specific to certain areas, and it has to be used only for those areas. So that was why we were going to use it. But as we can now use that NORDS grant completely on the Stonecutters Road culvert, and we have enough in reserve to cover the entire project, we will be shelving the Hart Road culvert for now. We've spoken to Calendar, and they're the same idea as us.
And we have no problem getting contractors now? Oh, we haven't.
No, we're not gonna reline, we're gonna do a replace on Stonecutters. Because there's only one, basically essentially one contractor that relines. So if we put it out for a replace, there's lots of contractors.
Okay.
So we're
That's-
looking at a different approach to these projects now
Mhm.
because we got
We can't wait
shorted.
any longer.
was a bad situation.
And they're probably not gonna come in, right? Provincial.
No,
I guess just putting penalties in there. would
yeah, we'll have,
motivate-
penalties and clauses in on these, RFPs. I mean, Bear Creek, we're looking at a different, approach of investigating, doing a bridge. We'll put a temporary one off to the side of the, discharge end of the culvert. We're looking at doing a temporary bridge there, making a road, a bypass road over there. Remove the old culvert and put a bridge across there, so we don't have to work in the water. Because it holds, typically there's 4 feet of water, so we'll spend a lot of money in fighting water.
Dewatering it, that would be,
So it's an option. We're just, we're investigating it right now. So we'll see what the costs come at.
Well, no, a bridge would be an engineered structure, am I?
So is the culvert.
Oh, okay, so they're both.
They're both the same,
Yeah.
same inspection every 2 years.
Do we do those internally too?
We'll see what the cost is, but yes, I would like to do the Bear Creek internally because we could do it a lot cheaper.
have we looked at the box culvert at all?
I've reached out to them,
Yeah,
no answer back yet.
okay,
And I've got the engineer reaching out to them also.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm trying to price 3 different things. Well,
Yeah.
The culvert, I'd rather go box culvert or bridge,
yes,
but I ultimately think the bridge would be the cheapest option.
yeah,
So when we come to that project, that's such a large amount that we will be doing it as a tender.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
So that
got,
will be coming back to council.
yes.
we will tender it and, and then see what the numbers come back at.
Yeah.
And we'll throw a number out too. And
Yeah.
So the other projects that we have are the reseal of, we call it Run E. We have all of our reseal and all of our gravel runs labeled on the table. So this is 4.8 kilometers of Lakeview, Lillian, Muskeg, Marion, and Hunters Bay. And that price we can lower to 161. And gravel run B, which is roads in the south end, we can lower to 240, and we put 120,000 away in reserve last year, so we're only looking to bring 120,000 out now. And for the Nords grant, there will be some left over after Stonecutters Road, and that can be used in that gravel application as well, because those are forest logging trucks go over those roads. So we're trying to move our grants around as much as we can. So the way that it works out is with the Stonecutters culvert, Bear Creek Road culvert repairs, the reseal run E, gravel run B. We also have to have the sand dome, nuts and bolts redone, and any repairs made, and an engineer's report for safety. And we have been requested by the municipality of Powassan, although not formally at this point. I'm waiting for something in writing to do our half of the bridge preparation studies for the Hummel Bridge, which will come to about 54,750. That can come out of the bridge reserve. So with the use of the OCIF that we banked last year and that we're getting this year, gas tax that we had in reserve from last year, and as well as what we're getting this year, and the Nords grant that we have banked all along. Plus, we're using $300 from the bridge reserve towards the Bear Creek culvert and towards the Hummel Bridge studies, and the 120,000 that we had put away for gravel in reserve last year. For all of those projects, taxation required is only $135,800.
Rest is all
The
grants.
rest is all grants. We're trying to do this with the least impact to the taxpayer. We do need to get those culverts done because they were catastrophic failures last year. Okay, so those were the changes that we would like to see there. We had put in there that we wanted to do some of the Alsace Road reseal, but we're gonna have to move that to 2026 and see what the funding looks like, knowing that we may be facing a crunch. But we'll look at that when it comes.
So the Alsace at least will be shovel ready.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have, well, I already have the numbers all done, ready to go, but yeah,
Hummel Bridge.
Oh, Hummel Bridge, yeah.
Hummel Bridge.
So there'll be basically one more, study required, but, the engineer said, don't do that one because it'll expire. It's species at risk.
Yeah, that's what.
So, but all the other ones won't expire with it. You know,
Yeah.
they're a good shelf life of 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, good.
So is there, am I missing something here? Sort of told last fall, or, last fall that all we got was a thank you for that.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything on the grant, and that's why we were waiting to hear from FOAS and why they wanted us to do these studies to have them ready. I think they were hoping to have the project shovel ready so that if there was grant opportunity, we could jump at it. But looking at the financing, it would still be, even if the provincial and federal governments came in at half, we would still be looking at our half of 1.5 million, which would be, let's see,
The rest of the Alisas, all those culverts, anything on that one section's all changed and ready to go. This side, cause the part that we tore up, I thought we were all doing that all in one
the
shot.
boundary LSAS?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all ready to go. Like we changed the culverts. It's just, there's some the dig outs and stuff gotta happen, but
Yeah.
as far as, infrastructure, it's all been done.
and the boundary Alsace Road surfacing is all included in the grant application with the
Yeah.
Hummel Bridge, because when the trucks come over to do the bridge, we didn't want, we
Yes,
wanted that to be the last piece of the puzzle, so we
Yeah.
wanted that done.
I just wanna make sure that that section, any change culvert, anything that's gotta be changed, do it now before you cover it.
Yeah, we've done all the ditching on that road and culvert changes. And so it's ready outside of the actual frosting, it's ready.
And gravel run B is Trout Creek?
Choke Creek ditch.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So we just moved a lot of the Alsace Road resurfaces, just got bumped down the years. That's pretty much all that changed there. Next is cemetery capital for the fence project. I just wanted to mention that the South Shore Rusto Snowmobile Club has donated $1,500 towards our fence project. So big thank you to them. And we had a lot in reserve, so that's a very small amount there. And I believe that was it. Those were all the changes that we have for the capital. So we just wanted to highlight them, that you know, we'll be bringing that back for a resolution of council to amend. Are there any questions for that?
That's some reading.
Tried to update it the best we could.
Yeah, yeah, oh, that's good.
So we're trying to find the best ways to save everything. So, next, we'll move on to the budget. So that's this presentation. Related to council. I also placed this document on everybody's spot to give you a synopsis of the previous, like 2024 is budgeted amount compared to actual. So my report shows the actual from 2024 compared to what we're budgeting for 2025. And sometimes there's a disconnect because some things we didn't use and it just looks a little bit strange. But this will give you more by department, what we budgeted, what we actually spent, and what we're budgeting again in 2025. All right, here we go. Page 1. Big reveal. So with the document the way that it is for this first draft, the levy increase that we're proposing is 5.53%. Tax rate increase is 4.69%. The tax impact per $216,000 of assessment is $101.37, which equals $8.45 per month. So it looks bigger when it's $100, but $8.45 a month increase for taxes for that amount of assessment. Yeah, on to the detail. So the first part is revenue. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, they gave us additional, 13% additional this year. And Oscar did touch on the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund is an unconditional grant, so we use that for operations. The municipal tax levy, this that we're requesting, payments in lieu are included. And then there's grants. Those grants coming in don't include the deferred revenue that Oscar was speaking about. Those were the grants that we received last year that we placed into reserve. These are just the allotments that we'll be getting for this year. For the levies that we pay every year, MPAC, so municipal property assessment went up 2%. Leasing services went up 6%. DSAP, social services went up 3%. East Home went up 3%. East Home, the levy package came in this week, so we've circulated a package to each of you to add to your binder. Health unit levy went up 5%. The EMS levy went up 3%. Now, it looks like the library went down 1%, but we had budgeted to the actual, and then we placed the rest into reserve. So for last year, and then they went with a lower amount. So the amount increase actually came from reserve for us. And the health center contribution, we do that every year. We had made a contribution agreement for 200,000. We have one more installment in 2026. So our levies went up basically 4%. Those are the ones we don't have any control over. We just pay. Interest earned. So we were actually over what we had budgeted for our interest because we did really well with our GICs. We have $2.5 million in a GIC plus some other investments. What we've done for this year, because the interest rate on the GIC isn't going to be as high, as we've opened a high interest savings account with the bank. And that way we can transfer as much of our money that isn't being used at that time into that account. It has to be over $1 million, so that's where we'll keep a lot of it. And we'll just keep watching those interest rates so that we can play it and get as much as we can from our investment. Interest on taxes. I'm estimating that we're going to be down a little bit. I don't know, but I know that we had a couple of arrears properties that paid up, so I'm not anticipating that we'll generate that much. Service fee, admin applications. This went up because we hadn't budgeted for trailer licensing or parking tickets that people pay to us directly. So that's where that revenue comes in. The salaries, benefits, deductions. This includes CPP, EI, EHT, WSIB, OMERS, which is the pension plan, and our benefit plan. Group benefits stayed at 0 this year, but we did have an increase of 1 full-time employee. So that will bump it up, but they're working really hard to keep our rates level. We also last year had an increase in our wage rate through the HR policy. So we always accrue our vacation to the following year. So that's why it looked that way in the financial statements, because we have long-term employees and they do get additional vacation that gets accrued following year from the year that they have earned it. Asset management program, we did the asset retirement obligation report that Oscar spoke about. We got one done last year. They didn't bill us until this year, so we're moving that payment to this year. But we had put that into reserve from last year, so that's coming out of reserve. Our webpage, we pay $2,000 a year. That's our budget. Council donations, we always budget $5,000. Council didn't give out as much last year. The strategic plan implementation, that's usually for postage and copying when we do our newsletters. Pay equity, we did our HR policy review last year, so we don't have that much that we need to do this year. Professional development, keep it 5,000. Council expenses, that accounts for cell phones, travel, and the appreciation dinner. Administration, propane, we estimate that's going to go up. Hydro, phone expenses, insurance. Now insurance is probably going to go up a little bit because we've had a couple different claims, so we're still waiting to get one truck back. Professional development, that goes up. That also includes the fire department's requirements. Including maintenance and supplies for admin, that includes our software support. Right now, we're still transitioning to TownSuite with the support of Baker software. Any amount that we pay to Baker, we get refunded by TownSuite, so that we're not paying them double. That also includes CGIS and other things. Audit fees, we had discussed audit fees when we got the quote for the moving forward. Those fees have gone up. Legal fees, we usually budget 15,000. We're going to budget 20,000. We have some additional inquiries that we're exploring. Planning fees, we usually, so here's an interesting one. Planning fees, we generally budget $5,000, and our planning department manages to keep that very, very low at $686 last year. But we are putting it up to 7,500 because we've had some really interesting inquiries come in. So we're gonna have to tap our professional planners for a bit. Integrity Commissioner, we were budgeting 2,500. I'm suggesting we go up to 3,000, just a small increment each year. Anything that's left over goes into reserve. Fire Department. So we've got the grant, the one grant, right? Will, did we hear anything on the other?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. So long-term debt, the two loans that we have out for the pickup truck and the side-by-side, I believe it is.
In the trailer.
And the trailer, they will be finished this year. Maintenance and supplies. New equipment, we generally budget 10,000. We didn't spend the full amount. Personal protective equipment and uniforms, that really hasn't gone up. Fire prevention and education, we budget 4,500 every year. Equipment maintenance and certification is 80,000. Firefighter points stipend. And the equipment rental costs. So we rent our equipment from ourselves. That's how we build our reserve for our equipment payments. Public safety, emergency management and community emergency management supplies. No change there. 911 expenses. So we have a revenue and an expense side because some signs we do charge for replacement signs. We always budget 250. We don't have too many of those. Expenses are usually higher. Bylaw enforcement. So revenue would be the tickets and fines, and expenses. 2,700. That's a very small amount. Animal control hasn't changed for years. So our revenue, we brought it down a little bit, our estimates to 3,200. Our costs are generally 2,500 per year. Building department expense versus revenue, you'll see it's a revenue neutral account. So we anticipate to make back what we put out in permit fees. Cemetery operations expenses show a 35,000. That also includes the expansion of the Alsace Cemetery that we are hoping to be able to take out of care and maintenance. So we have an application that we have to provide to the bereavement authority for approval, but we've already spoken to a surveyor to get the layout started so that we can start that expansion process. Landfill operations. We were over budget a little bit for revenues last year. That includes money that we received from the electronics program, from our scrap steel, all of the stewardship monies that we would receive, and things like that. That will, it went down a little bit as well because once we transition to the province in October, I don't know how that's going to impact us. Landfill study, we backed out we had been budgeting for the $100,000 to expand Bear Creek landfill, but they're doing it in stages. So we're just going to continue to with small increases to the budget till we get to where we need to be. Long-term debt for the compactor, rent. And the machinery rental, hopefully to cover that. Recycling operations goes down a little bit because in October, we're not supposed to have to pay for it. Household hazardous waste didn't change. Any questions for now? Revenues, we usually get money back from the aggregates association. We don't have any long-term debt coming out that would come here because we're going to be financing our house. Payments for trucks come out of reserves. We do have one tandem truck and the excavator will be finishing up next year, early next year, so that will lighten that debt load. Garage and supplies, 35,000. Culvert materials. Machinery rentals. And when we did a review of our machine rental rates, we decided to keep everything status quo for 2025.
Yeah.
We're making enough to make those payments for 2026. And we're doing an in-depth study for both the fire department and public works to make sure that we have those amounts where we need them to be.
That'll all fall into, so the money comes for asset replacement later on.
That's all part of it. Hardtop maintenance materials went up to 68. Calcium and dust control. I don't think we raised it that much, did we?
We didn't raise it all.
No,
We've
that
been
one
the same
stayed
for
the
the last
same.
3 years.
So that's where I'm not showing you what we did last year, but I do have it here. Bridge study materials, you'll see the 60,000. That includes the 55,000 for the studies for Hummel Bridge, but that's coming out of reserve, so that doesn't show that there. Who's top maintenance materials, 13. So this, okay, applied red B. So this is the gravel one where we said it was going to be 240,000. And we put 120 into reserve. It doesn't come out to that because it's in the Nords grant. And the Nords grant is down further the way that the numbers work there. It's all there. But it's gonna come out of the Nords grant. Quarry granite gravel program at 25,000. And the quarried gravel material stockpile at 25,000. Did you want to ask about that?
Yeah. Are we gonna stockpile B again this year?
Yeah. I used, I used whatever I stockpiled last year, we brought in 1,500 ton and I used that 1,500 ton. So I'd like to have some in the yard for, blowouts or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's nice to have at least 1,500 ton on hand.
Yeah,
So I mean, basically the 1,500 ton I'll bring in this year, I'll end up using it, cause I got a few big jobs I'm gonna, like Stiller Side Road, all the culverts need to be replaced in there. So I wanna raise that road up a little bit, cause it's sinking in again. So that's where a lot of that material will end up going,
yeah.
so.
Roadside cutting services, that's for the grass cutting along the roads. We have a contractor that comes in, we're just estimating that will go up. Ditching materials, that includes nuisance
Beavers.
Sign materials, last year we went way over our budget, but that was because we had to put up a bunch of signs that we hadn't planned on, so we're not planning on having to replace a lot of them, hopefully. Streetlight maintenance, didn't change. Winter maintenance materials, that's for sand and salt, 75. And then you'll see the OCIF, gas tax grant and Nords grants. They're both listed there because they won't be deferred revenue. So that'll be our expense. So it looks like a lot, but hopefully we can spare a lot. Next is museum. I did not put the foundation repair on here because I'm not sure what's going to happen, but Kim did submit another application today. Hopefully we'll get somewhere with that.
Yes.
Or a slab on grade, which would make for a longer,
It'd be permanent then.
yes, much better.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful. And we do have the engineer scheduled to go through and check it out to authorize it.
Soon as snow leaves.
Yeah, for this year. So maintenance and structural, not a lot of big changes for the museum. We did, for maintenance, we did have to take it up a bit because they're going to be making these changes. We're gonna have to do some work there. Special events, Indian pop, merchandise and gifts. I think we were gonna do that one a bit higher because we ordered some.
Yes, I can provide you the budget that was given at the last museum meeting that the board had agreed on, so I can provide that back at the office.
But I think too, the revenue will offset that, so I'm
Yes.
not anticipating any changes to this budget.
No, because I think she lowered the candy and budget as well, so I think they offset each other, the merchandise that the board agreed on.
Exactly, because we're down to barely anything left
Yes.
for merchandise, so we needed to recoup. Once we knew if we could open up that bill.
Yeah.
Same for books and the programming, yard maintenance, donations. So really, there's not a lot of change with the museum. So recreation. Community center operations, we budgeted, hopefully we'll get some more rentals, fitness center operations, more memberships. The dock and the boat launch, we budgeted another 5,000. We have to do some more work at the Wobulate boat launch and the Chapman's Landing dock, I believe. Recreation programming. Rink materials. So we need to replace the boards. But Kristen submitted an application for a grant this afternoon, for this morning, for a hydro grant to hopefully cover 25,000. So we'll see how that goes, and if that doesn't work, that amount can come out of the Parkland account. It does qualify for that. Parkland is a very regimented, what we can use it for, but green space and parks is allowed, including facilities, so we can use it.
And we get that,
Pardon?
we automatically get that.
We get that whenever we sell shore road allowance, that's where our portion
yeah,
goes into there. And there's different developments if we have a subdivision, et cetera. So that's all said and done, and we'll see how that goes. Canada Day, we normally budget that much. Beach and park maintenance and advertising and supplies. So again, not a whole lot of changes. I don't think I had on there, oh, the fitness center operations, you'll see the 23.5 for the expense, that includes the capital projects. 81,385, that's for our office to get the Town Street software, the final payment. And also we had to buy 2 new laptops. Mine was the oldest in the number key didn't work. Fire department, the 35.5 is for. It'll come to me.
The dry hydrants.
Thank you. Landfill, we don't have any roads projects. That shows the part that will be coming from taxation and some from reserve. Recreation capital, the 11,000 is a new water system here at the community center that'll be coming out of reserve. And museum capital includes the foundation. And then there's the reserves report. Regardless of how much is coming out of reserve. If you want to detail there, if there's any questions.
I need to apologize. The slideshow didn't flip on YouTube, but we will put it on.
This will, yes, it
posted
will be
tomorrow?
presented, it will all be posted after tomorrow.
Yeah, unfortunately, for some reason, it changed on our end, but it didn't change on
Okay.
YouTube. So that was, I apologize for that.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened.
No, that's a strange one. Okay, but all of these, this document and the document for KPMG and the capital change document will all be posted with. So this is our first run through of the budget. We'll be bringing it back to the next council meeting. With any small changes that we may need to make. I don't think there's too many, just some adjustments to the museum one.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Sit down dinner.
Okay.
It's a lot of money right now with this tax increase with this unknown, should we maybe look at doing a summer barbecue instead? For everybody, we have some great cooks, we have the proper equipment to do it in the park, put up the tent, do it properly for them. Just have to make a decision tonight, but we should think on it, I would.
I think with the financial times the way they are, I think we really need to consider stuff like that, yeah.
Anyhow, we can all think about it.
So we'd have to kind of go back and take a look at what you would drop the budget to.
So the budget right now is 10. Was accounted for 2,500 per year.
Yeah.
For the council term.
What did we spend the year that we did the little presents and the gift bags or whatever?
Or where we delivered them, we
Yeah.
didn't have to do the dinner, so
Yeah.
we saved about $3,000 that year.
That was all volunteers delivering themselves.
It was council.
Council.
Yeah.
That could be another option.
I still think we need to do some kind of thank you and get together. I still think that's super important. We rely on these volunteers, we rely on them to keep us,
And we still have to do something for it.
we do.
And you
So
said 11,000 is based on
10,
4
10.
years.
10,
Sorry, 10,000.
Based on 4 years, $2,500 per year gifts. If you were to look at that.
I think we need to thank them. Absolutely, it's very important, but they also are our constituents and they're gonna be in the position to not have a lot of income or money. Things are gonna be tighter for them. Do we need to do gifts? Having a get together, a barbecue or something a little bit more affordable that's not gonna put on the taxpayer, I think that's something we should consider. Like, we're still getting together and having fun, as much as we'd love to have a formal.
no, and I think the give back, the gift is important. For them, because what we've come up with is something reusable, which will save money, hopefully future for, right? Bring it with you, that piece of the puzzle, right? It would save money and
Yeah.
we take care of them, right? We put the right apparatus into the rink shack for the summer, we can. It also takes care of concerns at the landfill and filling the landfill and da. Right, it's a piece of the puzzle, kind of tax it all in together, right? So. Yeah, it's a challenge. I'm the first person that will say, like and I said it, I'm the first person that would say, I would rather do a barbecue every year and say thank you every year and spend a quarter of the money than do one big event every 4 years. Because I think we need to thank our volunteers every year. That's my personal
Because
opinion.
in a 4-year span, you might lose some of those volunteers.
And they don't feel
Unappreciated.
appreciated, right, at the end of every event. So we've come up with some really great ideas. I think we could say thank you through the year, like through the events through the year and maybe hang on to them.
Yeah.
'Cause if we lose volunteers, we're in some serious trouble. We must, rec committee is gonna be,
That's why I prefer to hand out the thing because everybody gets it. If you have a dinner on a certain date and they're not available to attend for whatever reasons, things change, everything changed, but if you have something that we're gonna deliver and thank you from the counselors or whatever, it might mean a bit more. I don't know. But it's just food for thought.
So the reason that we've always done a dinner every 4 years is we do it the year before council changes.
Yes.
You can't do something in the year of an election.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, if you're gonna go to an annual, it would be for 3 years and then.
and then not one.
Yeah. Or they could change it every 2 years or however, I don't wanna handcuff future councils either too, right?
I mean, another thing you could do if you wanted to continue with the every 4 years is you could put money into reserve each year. So it's not such a big thing.
The nice thing, I just thought about a barbecue, and like you said, you could do it 3 years in a row and it's personable every time with those people.
And if we're kind of saying it's in the, like, the end of the summer, the end of spring, or whatever, going into fall. And if they can't come, that's a choice.
Okay, so council's going to run the barbecue.
It would be us running it, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We're not gonna ask anybody else to
No.
do it.
No.
Mhm.
We could. do
So
that.
if that's what we're gonna do, that's our give back and that's our thank you.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
We got a nice barbecue that was donated through the soccer there. Nice, great, big, large one, so.
Few more logistics that have to be looked into for permits and stuff,
Yeah.
but we can do it if that's what
If you're
council
gonna
would
do
like.
it in the park, yeah.
Hmm?
If you're gonna do it in the park, yes.
In the park, yeah, I mean,
But we can take care of that, not a problem.
Yeah.
We just need to know sooner than later.
so we should think on this.
so we have a lot of time to think
No,
on this
we
because we have stuff out there already
Yeah.
to,
If you wanna
Ask
cut
for
the
quotes.
budget, then let's have that direction tonight, because then I have to present next council meeting any of the changes that we want to see.
Well, going barbecue, I'm in.
I'm okay with the barbecue, we just need to price it out a bit. but
Yeah.
Before you. Don't say you can do it for this amount and find out we can't do it for that amount. Are we allowed to have a week to extend deferred or however we?
Just so long as we have it
For the
before your next meeting.
Well, and it has to be a council decision, so we'll
Yeah.
just bring it to the next council meeting. And then, yeah, because we're doing public input into the budget in the first meeting of April, so this will just move everything to the last meeting.
so does that mean we're still taking on the gifts and the other ideas that we've done? We're just changing the meal section, like that's what we need to make a decision on, because we're still looking at, quote me, Kristen, like we're looking at 4,000 for like gifts, that kind of thing.
So your cups alone are, with the discount, you're looking at least $1,700.
So we're still at 2,000, not even looking at the dinner. And that's the cups, that's not including the individual volunteer stuff. So that's the dinner cups,
Oh,
those
yeah.
people. And then we were taking care of our students that come on a regular basis with a different gift, right? So at least, can I ballpark it at 2,200 minimum?
I would go more at 25.
25 minimum. So whatever decision we make, we need to start at the $2,500 mark. And then add on your tents and add on all the rest. We're probably looking at, with my background in food, you're probably looking at I'm gonna ballpark it at probably 5,000 minimum, if not 6. By the time you put tents up, by the time you get chairs, by the time you get tables, food. Because we need to make sure our food handlers and all that training's done. We're still looking at 5 to 6. I'm ballparking it, but that's
Yeah.
my experience,
Almost makes it easier just to have it here,
just saying.
you know.
It's pretty close, right, Kristen? Like, what did we kind of went out there, we're kind of like, okay, so we're looking for like a sort of a per plate number, right? And we're trying to bring that in under,
So if we were to do it buffet style, I'd really like to keep it around 33, 34 a plate. And I would not go over $36 a plate for like a plated sit-down dinner. And that's, yeah, you're looking at more,
4,680.
yeah.
so, and that's Cause we can't do that. Like, there's no way we could do that.
Now,
Cause you have, that's based on 130.
Yeah.
yeah, so that is based off of 130. Now, you have to take into consideration that is everything. That is right down to butter, buns, beverages, napkins, like
Everything.
serving,
Everything.
everything. At that point, that's all in.
We've managed to save a ton of money in decoration. Decoration is costing us nothing, thanks to our wonderful Kristen. So that's not costing us anything, and we've, like, you know what I mean? So we've cut a lot out of it. Yeah, we cut a lot out of it, and I know 10,000 sounds really high. I mean, I think we have to look at it future forward, right? Like if we say this one's a go, then we have to make a decision for future councils, right? Like,
0.26 of 1%.
huh?
10,000 is 0.26 of 1%. Of our
So-
taxes.
If I can, don't mind, sorry. The decorations, the invitations, all of that, I can cut costs on that and still make it look nice. I'm a very crafty person, so
Yeah.
like I wouldn't worry necessarily about that type of stuff. I would most definitely focus on your meal. And if that is doable the way that we maybe had hoped, I would definitely consider that for this round. Just my,
I think we have to go back and think about it, but yeah. We're kind of in the 11th hour and I understand, I get it. Like, I'm the first person to say to you, cut costs. I'm the first person to say, let's cut it, and yeah.
So, yeah, bring that back to the next meeting and then we can make any adjustments.
I just think we move all the information.
Yeah.
And the per plate is industry standard.
Yeah.
If not, well,
Any other questions on the budget? Everybody got a copy of the sweeper results?
Anybody read them or do you want a couple minutes to read them? The sweeper that's here now is 172 and it's a little younger. By not a lot. It's. Yeah,
Well, you know, to put it in perspective, the price of that sweeper, we put 2 motors on. The last 2 years, we put a motor on each year because the dust is killing it at $5,000 a crack.
Yeah.
So,
and it's paid for itself. How many times? We used to go do Trout Creek years ago. They would hire us the town and pay us to go do it years back. Like,
Now, that was the go behind, right?
yes,
When they, yeah.
the one that Pat Elliott was the only man that could back it up.
well, and I fixed that because I cut all that wheel off and I made it a solid tunnel.
Always wanted to. Yeah, but he could actually,
Yeah, because it was
pull
a
up to the
cost.
garage at night. We'd open the door and he could one pass it in, and then the next day somebody else had tried it. Finally, he'd say, like, we're late going home, like, that pass, but he put it away. He could just boom.
Yeah, I backed up a lot of stuff in my life.
Yeah.
That one gave me.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder. Mr. Kirk. Councilor Scott.
This goes in the loader frame, right?
Yes, it's gonna go on the new backhoe, it's a quick attach, so it'll just, okay, drop the bucket, hook into that.
that we accept the quote received from Brent Tractor Limited for the purchase of an Eddie Net Angle Sweep Flex. Price before applicable taxes, $29,250.99. All in favor? Okay, correspondence, minutes from the Golden Sunshine Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board held December 17th, 2024. The Nipissing Township Cemetery Committee meetings, minutes held February 10th, 2025, which we did a report on, and a thank you letter from the Calendar District Food Bank, Deborah Hickey, for our donation. And we have a thank you letter from North Bay Regional Health Center for our $10,000. And that's it.
It was quite kind to you.
Yeah.
Do I need a mover? Councillor Chilpico. That we accept the correspondence as presented. All in favor? What? Second, by Councillor Scott. The statement of accounts dated February 15th, 19th, 20th, 26th, 2025, totaling $110,309.01 be approved. All in favor? Thank you. And mover? This part of our meeting will be closed to the public as authorized by section 239, 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 C25 for consideration of the following subject matter, educational or training sessions. Purpose of this closed session, training to review council procedure. All in favor?
No, usually ask who's staying or who's.
Just Kristen will be staying, staff will be leaving.
Okay,
You ready, Mr. Mayor? You ready?
ready.
I'm gonna start recording.